All right, so we're going to go ahead and evaluate the piecewise function here, provided the information right above. We'll use the same exact piecewise function with the three pieces that we talked about in the previous notes. Here, we want to make sure that we pay attention. It is super important, very important to pay attention to these intervals. Because in this scenario, I'm only be given x values. The x values are appearing inside the parentheses in that function notation. So I got to really just make sure that I think, and I start off by thinking at least about those x values. So the first problem, it has an x value of -4. Which of the intervals are in play here? Well, -4 is smaller than -2, so eventually that's going to go ahead and that's going to fall in that first piece, the blue one, if you will. Number 6 is the x value for the second one. So again, I'm going to go to the intervals. I'm going to ask myself, where does the 6 fit here? And I would say that 6 is certainly bigger than the number 3. So that means that this second evaluation that we're going to do eventually will fall in the green category. That's the square root function in this situation. Then it gets a little tricky. I have the third evaluation at the x value -2. And we got to pay attention because I see over here in the intervals the -2 a couple different times, right? I see a -2 right here, and I see a -2 right here. And this is where my understanding of Algebra 1 and inequalities comes into play. I can't have the -2 for both of those functions. I need to make sure that I understand which one is in play here. Now remember how this worked out before with inequalities, with closed dots, with open dots. In this situation, we want to pay attention to the line underneath. And in this situation, the arrow with the line underneath it is the one that is blue. It's less than or equal to -2 for the blue one. So that is why this third evaluation is going to be a blue. We're going to go ahead and throw it into the first piece of the piecewise function. The arrow that is in orange with the -2 does not have a line underneath it, so it does not count. It is an excluded point for that orange one. However, that fourth and final evaluation we have to do looks like it's going to be our y-intercept because the x value is 0. And where does 0 fall in the intervals for this scenario? Well, 0 would be a number between -2 and 3, somewhere in between -2 and 3. So that is going to be one where we're going to go ahead and use the orange one. At this point, again, I took a moment. I just focus on which piece will be in play. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to write down which function is, and if I color coordinate this, it should be super simple to do. I'll go ahead and start off by writing the actual function itself without plugging it in first. I think this just helps me visualize what I'm going to be doing here. And from here, I will go ahead and plug in the numbers. Wherever I see the x will be where I see myself plug things in. So for instance, in this first one, I plug in -4 into the blue, the first piece. And I do the math work here, and I get 0, which means I would have a spot on this graph at -4, 0. The second one is in green. It's that square root function. I'll take the x value in the parentheses 6, and I'll plug it in wherever I see x. 6 plus 3 is 9, and I get the square root of 9 is 3, which means, again, somewhere on this piecewise function, and the second piece, I would have a point at 6, 3. Back to the first function with the 2x plus 8, and that -2 is my x value. Remember, this is the one that was the included location for the blue. It was excluded in the orange. I do my math work here, and again, of course, if you have any questions on how to do this math work, let me know. But in this scenario, I would have an included point, at the location -2, 4. Finally, I have my quadratic function making an appearance. We know this is already going to be the y-intercept for my graph. And hopefully the math work not terrible here for you. And we have, for this piecewise function, the y-intercept would be at 0, -3. So again, this process does involve first checking out the interval, making sure I know which x value we're using, what interval that applies to, and then which function it is that I'm going to plug it into.